Oh, it's not Gallifrey. Oh, still not Gallifrey. Well, should we go back? Oh, that's going to have an adventure anyway, but it's not Gallifrey, is it? Not Gallifrey.
Hello and welcome to The Fan Show. We've been talking to departing lead writer and executive producer Stephen Moffat about his time on Doctor Who. Today in part 2, we're discussing Stephen's first 3 series as showrunner, from the appointment of Matt Smith to the global domination of the 50th anniversary. If Russell T Davies made Doctor Who a hit in the UK, I think it was your era of the show that made it a global phenomenon. There are lots of changes between the end of time and the 11th hour. Maybe the most obvious one is casting. You hired 3 young, relatively unknown actors as your leads. Was that a no-brainer?
Casting is never a no-brainer. Casting is the dark arts of television. Casting is everything. Casting is absolutely everything. People might admire production design. They might admire a decent script. They either fall in love with or don't fall in love with the people in front of them. So casting is everything. If you're asking, in effect, was not casting stars? Well, generally speaking, one doesn't on Doctor Who. Generally speaking, you don't cast an established star. It has happened, obviously, Chris, obviously Peter, but generally speaking, they aren't new people. Someone who's going to come to define the show. But yeah, it's never a no-brainer. It's a massive challenge.
Yeah. Well, before you cast Matt Smith as the Doctor, is it right that you were going to cast David Tennant? You're actually going to continue him?
Well, I mean, David was just going through the now to me very familiar angst about leaving. Piers Wenger and I went and talked to David. I ran him through what that series would be if it was him. It would definitely have been his last one. There was no question about that we were coming. So my version of that series wouldn't be that the David Tennant Doctor would crash into the back garden about to regenerate. And little Amelia would help him back to the TARDIS. He'd fly off. And then she'd meet him again when she grew up, but he'd have no memory of that because we come to realise that was the Doctor from the future. And we'd make our way through the series to the point where the Doctor gets back to that. I sort of used that idea again later. So that would have been the show, and he thought very hard about it. And then he left me a message on my answer phone saying he'd thought very hard about it. And as I thought he would, he decided to move on.
And there was also a bold new aesthetic for Series 5. A new logo, a new TARDIS inside and out, a new Sonic, plus brand extensions like the Doctor Who Experience, Doctor Who Live computer games, and of course a whole new visual language and cinematography for the show. We're anticipating the show to change drastically again. Is it the duty of the showrunner to be such an agent of change?
No. It's not your duty to do anything of the kind. It's your duty to make good Doctor Who. That's it. That's all the audience cares about. Periodically, Doctor Who must change a lot, because that's what it does best. It doesn't survive change, it survives because of change. So occasionally, often coincident with a change of showrunner, you have to sort of wrench things around. I don't know that I went into Doctor Who. I know I didn't go into Doctor Who thinking that this was the perfect time for a massive change. But the fact was, Julie and Russell and Phil were leaving. David and Catherine were leaving. Everything was changing. All we could do, the best way to conceal that level of change was to change everything. Do you know what I mean? If everything changed, it looks like a bold new decision and a new era. It was, frankly, if David and Catherine had wanted to continue, I wouldn't have done that. It would have been the same TARDIS. It would have, because there was no way that version of the show was worn out.
Not everything you introduced was successful. You introduced a new design for the Daleks. There we go, on our mugs over there. Yeah. How hard is it redesigning an icon? Well,
I would appear to make it look very difficult. It was a salutary lesson, and let's just be clear in talking about the redesigned Daleks that the fault resides entirely with me, not with any of the brilliant team who made the new Daleks. Right? They were beautiful in many respects, but it was my mistake. And a completely unnecessary one. But I'll tell you what was interesting about it. It was a fascinating lesson that I sort of never forgot, is we made the Daleks huge. What a stupid idea. Why? Well, you make the Daleks huge, you just move the camera further away and you make the Doctor smaller. Now, if you've seen those actual props, they're gorgeous. If you go and see them in real life, or you see them on stage, they look amazing. Where they don't look good is on television, the only place where it matters that they look good. And we put so much thought and effort into our first block. which were the Weeping Angel episodes, the two-parter. Episodes that I think stand up to this day as amongst the best we ever did. I think they're absolutely tremendous episodes. I mean, Matt looks like he's been playing it for years. Karen looks like she's been in it forever. It all looks terrific. I took my eye off the ball of the Block 2 episodes. And I shouldn't have been visiting that set. I shouldn't have been, giving endless notes on the rushes that were unnecessary. I should have moved my attention to Block 2. Taking a look at those Daleks, looked at the camera tests, thought, no, let's not do it. Most of the things I wasn't quite sure about happened in that second block, where my attention was on beginning. And beginning's easy, it's keeping going that's hard, and keeping going is all about Block 2.
As well as a bold change in look, there was also a distinct shift in tone for Series 5. From Russell's kitchen sink drama with companions' families to more, in my opinion, a more fairy tale escapist vibe. Was this a conscious effort to tap into an emerging young adult audience?
No. And I sometimes do think that Russell and I, in order to make us look different, have to be caricatured in our approaches. I think most people who are not Doctor Who fans, if you describe the first 4 years of modern Doctor Who as a kitchen sink drama, would be wondering what the hell was in your kitchen. I mean, and some people say, no, it's a soap opera. It really isn't.
No.
So that's a grotesque exaggeration, and the fairy tale approach is a grotesque exaggeration of mine. Really, it's about a wizard in a magic box with a magic wand. I don't think it fits sometimes. It doesn't fit all the time. There's loads of episodes that are not fairy tale at all. It became the thing people said, and once you watch something through a filter of how it's already been described to you, you see it. Go look at any of Russell's series and say fairy tale, and you'll find it there again. Any series of Doctor Who is like a fairy tale because that is the genre it most precisely resembles. I never went in saying, no guys, I just need a bit more of a fairy tale filter on that lens. I never said that.
Your first series was a critical and rating success both in the UK and around the world. And then you have to do it all over again. How hard is it coming up with that difficult second album?
It's very hard. It's very hard because just like the first and second block, you get to the end of it, you think, what, again? What are you talking about again? What do you mean again? We've just done it. Can I have a holiday? And the thing about Doctor Who is it overlaps. You know, you're working on the next series while you're still working on the last one. And in that overlap, sometimes you can really lose track of what's going on. So it was difficult. Of course it was difficult. But by that stage, having got through one series of Doctor Who, I knew what I was about. I was never going to have enough time to do anything. I knew that the way a working day or a working week in Doctor Who is you're not going to get everything done that you need to get done. So you have to kind of choose your failures. We're going to let that one go because we need to fix this. I could go to that meeting, but that script needs rewritten. You start to know where you must be, not where you'd like to be, or not even where it would be beneficial for you to be. Mostly, I'm trying to fix scripts. That's what I'm doing. And if I'm not doing that, there better be a damn good reason.
And you like to, you have experimented with format quite a bit as well. Series 6 and Series 7 are split seasons, and then you introduce blockbuster season openers. And then Series 7 is all blockbusters. How much of these were stylistic choices and how much of these were practically driven? Actually,
I think I can now say Series 6 being split wasn't me at all. It was BBC One. They wanted a split season, and there was something. It's pretty obvious. I can't remember what it is, but it's pretty obvious if you go back and look at the TV schedules why we are split around the summer. I forget what was going on in the middle, but there's something he didn't want us there. And I looked at it and I thought, actually, we could take it to that cliffhanger and resume. I thought, that works quite well. That's quite good.
And I guess you don't really have that much control really over scheduling as showrunner. Well, I think fans assume this. You do.
Yes, I've got some godlike power.
Yeah.
No, I have absolutely no control over the scheduling. I deliver it when I'm told to. Every attempt that the BBC has made to schedule Doctor Who and Sherlock around each other, and they have made attempts, not because I've asked them to. I've never asked them for that. Every time they do it, it's been a disaster. They've always ended up at the same time. Every single time. And people keep saying, you're scheduling around Sherlock. I say, look at it. I'm doing them on the same day, in the same month. How could that be to my benefit? So every single time I did a series of Sherlock, I was running between the two shows. And that was running between the 50th and I think His Last Vow on Sherlock was just insane.
Yeah.
No one's meant to live like that.
Yeah. I think at this point it's worth talking about your love for writing timey-wimey stories.
Timey-wimey.
Barring a few notable exceptions, Doctor Who writers have used time travel predominantly as a vehicle to get to story, whereas you, in your stories, it's almost a character in its own right. What is it about you and time?
I think time travel is fascinating. I think the timeline of a story is fascinating. Even if you take time travel out of the picture, when does a story start? And when does a story finish? And in what order do you tell it? This is not a matter of sequence, but it's a matter of point of view. Mm-hmm. From whose point of view are you telling this story? Mostly we tell a story from God's point of view, or from a universal observer's point of view. If we told the story of a terrible disaster that happened, we'd tell it from a God's eye view. Fine, nothing wrong with that, except nobody experiences the events that way. No one person experienced that. Everybody had their own story, their own version of it. And later on, somebody dispassionately pieced that all together and came up with a largely fictitious, but probably fairly accurate version of the event. If you want to put people inside a drama, you have to go to point of view. The events as it happened to this person, from beginning to end, then as it happened to this person. Mm-hmm. And you allow the audience to assemble their own God's eye view of the event.
Yeah.
Largely, even in my era, the TARDIS is like a bus and it delivers you to the next adventure. But sometimes the Doctor's unique relationship with time can be at the centre of the story, because it's not just that he's got a time machine. He doesn't just own a time machine. He lives in one. The whole universe is alive and well outside his blue doors. It's not that he knows that he was at Churchill's funeral. It's that he's having dinner with Churchill next Tuesday. That's a very, very different view of the universe. And when you're celebrating your main character and trying to see, to some degree, the world from his point of view, I think you can't ignore the fact that for him, everyone's still alive. There's everything to play for. Or when he's having a lonely, morbid night with his electric guitar, he's thinking everybody's dead.
So sad. Whilst you've won awards for some of your most timey-wimey scripts, like Girl in the Fireplace and Blink, paradoxically, for some fans, and you're going to have to forgive me for this, some stories became quite hard to follow. I guess what I'm asking is how much of your era happened and how much of it unhappened?
Periodically, we do a house cleaning on Doctor Who. I think I've just done one again, which allows you to correct the continuity to roughly the history of Britain as we know it. British history, according to Doctor Who, it would mean that if you saw an alien, you'd say, "Oh, gee, is it Christmas?" You'd be so bored of it. So unhappening stuff occasionally, I think, is a necessary. I mean, Russell did it with the Time War. I did it with the Big Bang, the big memory thing recently. Just occasionally you say, no, the new companion comes from our Britain, not alternative Britain, where Daleks are a commonplace. But if Chris does the Daleks invade Earth story, I want human beings to be saying, "What are these strange things?" No, oh, gee, they're quite reliably defeatable, aren't they?
Yeah.
Just go into a room with a relatively narrow doorway and they're screwed. Hard to follow. If they're hard to follow, it's because I've screwed up. If they're good and exciting, it's because I've got it right. The timey-wimey story is not Blink, and it's not Girl in the Fire. It's not any of those. The impossible to track Doctor Who story is Day of the Doctor. Day of the Doctor, and I can say this, I wrote it. In what order does that happen? Where do you start? Do you start with Matt Smith? Do you start with John Hurt? Do you start with Paul McGann? Where do you start? And what happens next? I'm going to write in the story saying, well, what happens next? Because technically what happens next is that bit. And then you get to the bit where the Doctor goes back along his own timeline and fixes where the painting is. Now, that's Doctor Who at its most accessible and multiplex. That is Doctor Who as Doctor Who for everyone, even if you've never seen it before. And it did work from that point of view. And yet, by far and away, it is the most complicated, timey-wimey Doctor Who story ever told. If you get it right, it works fine. If you don't get it right, then I end up confusing people, and that's my bad.
Well, some fans, as you know, are very vocal when they don't like something. And one of the things you've had to deal with that your predecessor didn't have to deal with as much is social media. Mm-hmm. And it's not just having an opinion, it's people feeling like they need to be heard and responded to. You yourself left Twitter in 2012. How did social media affect you as showrunner?
Well, first of all, I left Twitter in 2012 because I was having trouble meeting my friends at a pub. During the time I was on Twitter, people started communicating. The friends I knew were communicating with me on Twitter saying, "Oh, are you going tonight?" And I wasn't seeing anything because there was just this vast column of people mostly saying, contrary to what people imagine, mostly saying very nice things to me. And I was missing everything. I wasn't, so I thought, and I initially thought, can I edit this down so that I can just see my friends, which apparently you can. And then I just thought, oh, sod it. No one will notice if I just get rid of it. Over the time since I've left, and I have had no temptation to go back, I think it's probably become a lot nastier, and people have talked. I know that I see what sometimes people might say to Louis or to Sue or to Mark, and I think that's out of order. People should not be behaving that way. It's a difficult and sometimes unpleasant subject. I don't know, because I socialise, as you well know, among Doctor Who fans. I have been to conventions. I'm sure I'll go to some in the future, and I've always known it to be a very friendly, very creative, very bonkers community, which I rather like. And there's great artwork comes out of it. Great work comes out of it. People change careers because of it. It has it's a cradle for a next generation of a creative community. And I think that's very exciting. But an impossibly small number of incredibly rude, attention-seeking people have dominated, or it seems to me have dominated, the online discourse about it. And which means I have to say to all the writers and directors who come onto the show, you will not go on social media. You will not go there, because I don't want you upset. I don't want you coming in one morning crying. I don't want you in a state of misery. And when you go to a convention, maybe be wary of it. This pains me. This pains me to an extraordinary extent, because the relationship between a fandom and a show should be permeable. They should be talking to each other. Because particularly in Doctor Who, where the creative team of Doctor Who grew out of the fandom of the show, the idea that we don't just hang out in the same bar, the idea that the storyteller doesn't sit around the same campfire as the audience, is abominable. It's not the way it's meant to be. We're not supposed to be off on the side of a mountain in a storm issuing proclamations to the unworthies below. We're supposed to be out among our audience, talking to our audience. But if you have that poison, then you can't, with a good conscience, suggest people do that.
Let's turn to a big milestone in both your career and the history of Doctor Who, the culmination of the show becoming a global phenomenon, the 50th anniversary special, The Day of the Doctor. Pressure, that is one word that springs to mind. Pressure and responsibility. How on earth did you cope during this period?
Very badly. Very, very badly. The Doctor Who 50th, I mean, I think I've said it many times, but there wasn't anything very enjoyable about doing that. I look back on it with great satisfaction, because I think it's a genuinely terrific episode of Doctor Who. I'll just say that.
It is. It is.
But at the time, I was just upset. Everybody was cross with me. I remember that. Just everybody was cross. Everybody. The script was light, so everyone was cross at me. I'm saying, guys, who's in it? Who have you got? No, well, they're all in. No. You tell me who's under contract to be in it, because I promised this year's Olympics. Could you tell me who's in this? Jenna. And that was the list. I'm saying, right, so I'm celebrating 50 years of Doctor Who with Jenna, who's wonderful and one of my personal favourites, but I don't think that's really going to cut it. So I came up with an alternative version of the 50th, which was the Doctor, having stepped into his own time stream at the end of Name of the Doctor, is eliminated from all of space and time. And Clara is trying to remember him. And the Doctor turns up in various different fictional forms. And she says, that story's true. That wizard, that was the Doctor. And so she keeps encountering this, and we have the Doctor played by a succession of very famous people. That was my plan. Very famous people. As it turned out, David and Matt, neither of whom were under contract, both said yes, thank God. David said, well, am I just the comic relief in this? And Matt said, why has David got all the jokes? So I was saying, do you want to swap? And they said, no. So, okay. But Christopher Eccleston said no. And that was awful. That was just awful. I was so depressed that day. because I'd written most of the script and he was in it and I didn't know what to do. And I was saying, well, but, could we use one of the other doctors? And the BBC were not unreasonably saying, you promised us the Olympics. So I went and finally, there was no ending to Name of the Doctor. Name of the Doctor at that point just ended with the Doctor going into the time stream with a big blank with me saying, I'll figure it out when we figure out what we're actually doing for the 50th. So I said, okay, what if he goes in there and we discover to our horror that there was another Doctor. There was another Doctor. In that time that Michael Gray took the show off the air, there had been a whole other Doctor and we never saw him. And immediately I said it, I regretted that the words had come out of my mouth because everybody went mad with joy for this idea. Remember Faith Penhill saying, this is brilliant, that's brilliant, that's exactly what we need to be, a new Doctor played by an incredibly famous, distinguished actor. Big ask. And I was saying, oh, no, look, we've changed the numbering. I can't change the numbering. What do I do? I change the numbering.
Your fan brain must have been going, oh.
What if people have got tattoos with the numbers? I mean, those people are going to be in agony replacing the numbers. So, I mean, there might not be room for a new one. But that was, the die was cast. That was the right thing to do. I remember talking to Mark Gatiss about it, and he said, look, no, that's right, because the 50th has to do something new. Just raiding the back catalogue is not enough. Do something new, and that's the right thing to do. So I wrote it as the last line of the script is, and the most famous actor in the world turns around, introducing as the Doctor. And we're saying, well, who could that be? Because if it's Brad Pitt, oddly enough, you go, no. I mean, I think Brad Pitt is great, and he's obviously a massively beautiful man and a vastly popular actor, but you wouldn't want him as the Doctor, would you? He's not the Doctor.
No, can't see it, no.
Also, we needed to be someone who could have been the Doctor in the 16-year gap.
Yeah.
It needed to be someone who in your ideal, most frantic dreams could have been the Doctor. The byword for the part was, if it was John Hurt, it would be great. And we didn't have a second idea. We did not have a second idea, so we sent it to John Hurt. We are weeks out from the show. We are weeks, maybe, really small number of weeks out from the show. Like 4 weeks, something like that. It's terrifying. And he said, yes, thank God. And so the 50th was saved. Because if some bloke had just turned around to be the Doctor.
As well as retrospectively introducing a new incarnation of the Doctor, the War Doctor, you've also reversed a decision of your predecessor by resurrecting the Time Lords. And at the end of the Day of the Doctor, it's suggested that the story for the next 50 years is finding Gallifrey, the long way round. Yet we visit it.
Oh, there it is.
2 years later. Why did we go back to Gallifrey so soon?
Because I don't think there's any plot at all in the Doctor looking for Gallifrey. I think it's boring. I mean, I kept trying to, when we were doing Series 8, I kept saying, well, maybe he could be looking for Gallifrey. And? It's not Gallifrey. Oh, still not Gallifrey. Well, should we go back? Oh, that's going to have an adventure anyway, but it's not Gallifrey, is it? Not Gallifrey.
I think 50 years of that would have got quite boring.
Yeah. So introducing, as has been done occasionally, a quest into Doctor Who. Does it work? I mean, they did it in the Key to Time season. Even there, which I said, it's a lovely season of the show, but it's you sort of saying, oh, well, there's the bit. Yep, got that. Let's have an adventure now. It just adds on to the outside of it. So, also, the other thing is, which is a great mantra from me and Mark Gatiss, to hell with deferred pleasure. If something exciting is coming up, do it now. Go on. Don't wait for 20 years. Just do it now.
Yeah.
Oh, Gallifrey. There it was.
At this point, you knew you'd be saying goodbye to Matt. Did you consider moving on with him?
Yes, I did. In fact, I'd always sort of assumed that I would leave with Matt. I was so insanely busy, I didn't have time to leave. I was season 7, Day of the Doctor, Time of the Doctor, and people saying, well, who's the next Doctor? And I'm going, oh, what? Yes, better find one. And before I know it, I'm auditioning Peter Capaldi. That's when I suddenly got excited. I thought, my God, we could Peter being the Doctor. That's a whole new Doctor. That's going to be a whole new sky for us to fly through.
Wow, and then you did several more years off that, 4 more years.
Yes,
and then,
yes. Well, that's another story.
And that's a story for part 3.
Part 3.
And that's the end of part 2. We'll be back next week with some of this.
I took Chris out for dinner just as a friend, just to hear what he was up to, but really to work out what his diary was. I was sort of asking casual questions like, are you doing a 3rd series of, Broadchurch?
You'll be able to see that here. To catch up on part 1, click here, and to subscribe to the official Doctor Who YouTube channel, click here. We'll see you next week. Bye!